And Verhei, joining me as always, Football Outsiders editor-in-chief Aaron Schatz, and FO contributing writer in the lower right-hand corner of our Brady Brunch setup here, Bryan Knowles. How is everyone doing this afternoon where you guys are?
Better than last week. Everything's going good. Niners top the division. Everyone in the NFC West at 2-2, just like we all thought. It's all good.
Yeah, I'm all right here. Everything's good. I didn't have any light bulbs explode, so I'm fine.
Hey, it just makes Friday nights more exciting. It's something everyone should try.
No explosions, no injuries, and everyone, I believe, in the NFL is currently tied for first place right now.
Yes.
Except Houston. Except Houston and Philadelphia. Our projections were Philly good, Houston bad, everyone else in the middle, and so far that is coming true. We're going to start today with one of those teams stuck in the middle. One of those teams in the four-way tie for first place in the NFC West. The Seattle Seahawks, like nobody expected, are 2-2 right now.
Wait. Before we go on, sponsor read.
Oh, God, thank God you're here. You're like a professional and stuff. And I'm just, I even told you guys I had the ad read ready to go, and then I went right over the ad read. But we do a sponsor read. We're very happy to have a sponsor with Underdog Fantasy because you, the Football Outsiders reader/viewer/listener, you can play on Underdog Fantasy with us. You can double your first deposit up to $100 with the promo code OUTSIDERS. You know, even with NFL best ball season over, Underdog has other user-friendly game formats to spice up all your games. They can try their Battle Royal, a 6-round best ball-style draft with simpler chances to win the traditional daily fantasy sports sites, or try their Pick'em games, where you can wager on players' chances to go higher or lower than their projected stat lines, even in states where traditional prop betting currently isn't available. Underdog is the fastest-growing fantasy site around. Join the fun over at UnderdogFantasy.com. or download Underdog in the App Store and use promo code OUTSIDERS now to double your first deposit up to $100. And with that very, very important piece of business out of the way, now it's time to talk about, again, what we were all expecting to talk about, which is Geno Smith, who's taking the NFL by storm over the first 4 weeks of the year. A quick recap, he was a backup for half a decade or more. Had 3 starts in place of Russell Wilson in 2021. Of course, the Seahawks traded Russell Wilson away, but they were sure to acquire Drew Lock in return because they wanted to get a starting quarterback. And it turns out they may have already had one in Geno Smith. Geno currently leads the NFL in completion percentage. And yes, there's a lot of dink and dunk field completion stat padding in that. But he's hits a few big plays against Detroit. He is right around the average, around or better than the average rates in touchdowns, yards, interceptions, sacks, and in the top 3, I believe, in Football Outsiders DER and DVOA stats.
It's incredible. His DVOA through 4 games is 29.7%, which is second, but only behind Tua Tagovailoa. There's a top 2 everyone was predicting before the season started.
That's right.
His career high before this year, in a season where he qualified, was negative 12.5%. So this is, I think, slightly out of character for Smith. His completion percentage through the first 4 weeks is 77.3%, which has been going around the Twitterverse as the best through 4 games in NFL history, with a minimum of 125 attempts, which is a very odd minimum to have because they're trying to squeeze out 2007 Tom Brady from that category because he went after a harder start. I think it's fair to say that 2007 Tom Brady was slightly better than Geno Smith has been to this point in time. Yeah. This is still a shocking start from a quarterback. I think most people ranked him 33rd out of the 32 starters before the season began. So
I was up there. I did one of these shows and I mentioned I found like a dozen teams where I thought their backup quarterback could start for the Seahawks, and I may have to revise that statement.
Yeah, I mean, we had them 30th in the offensive projections, and that was only because, believe it or not, Geno Smith actually improved their offensive projection over what it was with Drew Lock.
Yeah.
But we didn't think they would be good. And they have been good. And the question is whether this can continue. And I am here to be skeptical.
Excellent.
Because Geno Smith has never done anything like this before. including last year when he started for this same team, right? If Geno Smith suddenly had got it in Seattle, wouldn't we have seen that in the games he started last year with the same receivers and the same offensive coordinator, as opposed to the games he started this year? So I think this is an early fluke.
As the person who lives in Seattle and pays the most attention to Seahawks games, I think obviously he's not going to. I don't think Geno Smith is going to finish as a top 5 quarterback in the NFL. I don't think that's a long-term thing. You go back overseas and you really find he had one good half against Denver, no good halves against San Francisco, and then he played very well against Atlanta and Detroit, who I think we're going to find out by the end of the year are going to be very low in our defensive rankings. So there's certainly a lot of opponent adjustments that have yet to kick in here. I think you're also going to see it got better after the Detroit win, but after the Atlanta game, after 3 games in, he was first in completion percentage, but next to last in yards per completion. So it was nothing but there's a lot of bad screens in those completions that are counting as completion percentage style points, I suppose. So the big plays were mostly came against Detroit, and that has been a fluky thing this year. They're probably not going to have as many as those going forward. I think that fluky thing that week, and they're not going to have as many of those going forward. But the one thing I will say that has changed from these Seahawks compared to last year's, besides the obvious of Russell Wilson and Geno Smith, their 2 rookie tackles have been as everything you could have hoped for. Charles Cross, the first rounder, I think 6th overall, stepped right in the starting role and has been very, very good. And Abraham Lucas, who was the later round pick, 3rd rounder, I think, and wasn't even necessarily certain to start. Most observers would tell you he's been the better of the 2. So, especially against Atlanta, but often against Detroit, Geno had just all day to do whatever he wanted in the pocket. No one was talking about Aiden Hutchinson after that Lions game. He had no impact as Smith and the Seahawks just kind of did whatever they wanted on offense. So this offensive line is playing very, very well, and I do think that is sustainable.
Yeah, that's a very positive sign going forward.
Yeah, that's an improvement over last year. I'll also point out that they've actually played a harder than average schedule of defenses so far. Believe it or not, their schedule of opposing defenses ranks 8th. So Geno Smith has actually been a little bit better than the raw numbers suggest.
And against the 49ers, I mean, there was a lot of dink and dunk, but Seattle did move the ball with a decent level of success, especially when you compare it to what Matt Stafford did last night. I mean, right. The Seahawks, I mean, it wasn't good, but compared to what everyone else has done against San Francisco so far, Geno looked pretty good against Seattle. I think he played 80% of his passes against the Niners.
So I went looking for today's DVOA article at the biggest differences between our projections and where teams stood after week 4. And I went back to 2010. So that's 12 different years plus this year. And Seattle has the biggest gap in rank between where we had them projected and where they actually were after 4 weeks. They were 30th in the projections, and they are number 2 now. And I believe we have a graphic, and hopefully we're showing it on the screen. But the rest of these teams that had similar rises from the preseason projections to what they did in the first 4 weeks, the ones that were quarterbacked by similar sort of journeyman quarterbacks, for the most part, reverted to form after the first 4 weeks. The 2011 Bills were 24th in offense the rest of the way. The 2014 Browns with Brian Hoyer were 29th. The 2016 Broncos with Trevor Siemian were 29th the rest of the way. There's 2 teams that shocked us with these early season good offense that kept that good offense going the whole way. One of them was the Bills in 2020 with Josh Allen, which makes sense because that's young quarterback blossoming. And the other was the 2015 Bills with Tyrod Taylor. And that's the only example that makes me think, okay, maybe this could be for real. Like somebody hasn't done it before. But even Tyrod Taylor, he did not have a long history of being a starter. He had a long history of being a backup, but I think 2015 may have been the first time that he was a starter. So it's not like Geno Smith where he failed as a starter and then was a backup and then came back as a starter. So the similar situations to this over the last dozen years, those teams for the most part revert back to expectation in the second half of the season.
And I think that's not a surprise. And I think a healthy degree of skepticism is fair. And of course, there's still 13 games to go, and all their division games. So except 7 division games. No, 5 division games. I can do math. I'm good. I'm an adult. I work for a stat site. Speaking of stats, every Seahawks fan in the Northwest is going through a healthy amount of, I believe it's pronounced Schadenfreude, enjoying the struggles of Russell Wilson and the Denver Broncos. Numerically, there's no question that Smith and the Seahawks have been better than Wilson and the Broncos for this first month of the year. Russell Wilson is currently 16th in DVOA, 15th in DER, 23rd in completion rate. And even this week, which I thought was his best game of the year, I didn't realize when I sat down and looked at it, he only had 1 first down in the second half. So that's partly because they were constantly taking sacks and penalties and falling into 3rd and long. So it's not 100% his fault, but he's not 0% his fault either. They're still very much start and stop and a lot of work to do there, which leads to a question that was asked on Sunday. Would you rather have Russell Wilson or Geno Smith, 2 first-round picks, and $30 million? And that is our, the question. It's easy to answer in hindsight, and there's still a long way to go. I don't think buyer's remorse is necessarily set in yet in Denver, but I do think that the first month has not gone as well as they had hoped.
I think it is more likely that Russell Wilson is not as good as we thought than it is that Geno Smith is much better than we thought.
Yeah.
In other words, like if I'm reviewing this trade and looking forward at the rest of the season, not worry, that's the wrong word, but as the Seahawks, I would feel better about the idea that we got rid of Russell Wilson and didn't have to pay him what he's not worth, then I would feel good about the idea that Geno Smith is our new franchise quarterback.
I also, if I'm a Broncos fan, I'm not yet saying, what if Russ is washed up? I'm worried about the coaching. I'm worried that, has Nathaniel Hackett not figured out a way to use Russell Wilson yet in his offense? Is it a square peg in a round hole, and Hackett hasn't been able to bridge that gap yet? Because everything else Hackett is doing is failing miserably at this point in time. So adding, Wilson is struggling because of that is a pretty easy jump to go to there. So the truth is probably somewhere in the middle. But if I'm a Broncos fan, I'm clinging on to, maybe we'll replace a coach. That's not exactly what you want after the 4th week of your brand new head coach. But I think that is probably that's something you probably lean on more than Wilson is washed and he's not getting good anymore.
Well, they are committed to Wilson at this point, so I don't think there's anything they can do but change the coach.
No. So this is a total hindsight question because there's no undoing the trade. Right.
That's true. I do think as far as have the Seahawks found their franchise quarterback, I did my quick reads column up at footballoutsiders.com right now. Cheap plug, thumbs up. Looking at other quarterbacks who were started, played badly, went to the bench, and came back to start again and played well. And there's a few examples of where this has happened. The best single season was Randall Cunningham with the Vikings in 1998 when they went 15-1 and went to the NFC Championship game. Other good years was Drew Bledsoe with the Bills in 2002, although that's kind of a gray area, whether you want to count that as an injury replacement or a benching. There have been a few good years, but the key is most of them were in fact good years and not good series of years or good whole 10 years. Randall Cunningham went back to the bench in 1999. People forget this. It was an oasis in the desert that one great year, and then he was back to being a solid backup, and he was hung around for a while. You have Steve Young after his benching in Tampa and riding the pine in San Francisco for several years, turned into Steve Young. And a few readers in the comments have noted you have guys like Rich Gannon, who were backups for a while and then came back with more productive starters. But by and large, these guys who are benched and come back and play well don't play well for a long time. So the notion that can Geno Smith carry this through the rest of the year? We're slightly skeptical of that. Can he carry it through 2023 and carry it through 2024? I'd be very surprised. So I don't think this success takes them out of the quarterback market for the offseason.
Well, the worst case scenario is if Geno's just good enough to get the Seahawks to like 7-10 or 8-9 and get them out of the first round quarterback discussion.
Yep.
Because if we don't think Smith is going to be good in the future, winning too much will actually hurt the Seahawks here.
You're not wrong, but they do have 2 first-round picks, so they might be able to make a deal to get up for somebody. So that is where the Seahawks start. Now we should talk about their opponents from Sunday, who are having a fascinating little year. The Detroit Lions, as we all expected, sarcasm, lead the NFL in scoring offense, and as we all expected, not sarcasm, last in the league in scoring defense. The only team over a full season to be first in points scored and last in points allowed was the 2000 Rams. And the peak of the greatest show on turf. Was Mike Martz their coach then?
Yes.
Yeah.
That is a Mike Martz stat if ever I've heard one. Who would say things like he didn't care if his quarterbacks threw interceptions, which would of course put the defense in bad position and all that kind of thing. And his quarterback was Kurt Warner, and Warner has had his ups and downs in his career as well. But these Lions have already lost 2 games where they've scored 35 or more points. That is tied the single season already. We're barely in October. The last team to do that was the 2020 Texans. In the Lions games for the first 4 weeks of the year, 281 combined points. That is the most through 4 weeks in NFL history, breaking the record of 276 set by the 2016 Falcons. And I believe that Atlanta team made the Super Bowl.
They did. They got the defense stuff. They got the defense figured out by the end of the year. I don't think that's going to happen in Detroit, but you never know.
It's always fun.
The main conclusion here is put all the Lions into your fantasy team. Every single one of them. Because they did all this without Amon-Ra St. Brown. They did this without, they're missing half of their skill position players, and they still were marching up and down the field. Put all the Lions in your starting lineup. Put everyone playing the Lions in your starting lineup. Just focus on that game.
It's not a bad strategy. And
this week is probably going to be Bailey Zappe versus the Lions defense.
And Zappe's going to go 326 yards.
The resistible force versus the movable object.
Tune in now. Get your popcorn ready. This Lions Seahawks game had the 18th most yards from scrimmage in NFL history. 1,075 yards in this game alone. If they had gone overtime, they would have had a good shot at breaking the record of 1,151 set in that Super Bowl. Patriots Falcons Super Bowl. Was it Patriots Falcons or Patriots Eagles?
That was Eagles Patriots, I believe.
Eagles Patriots, excuse me. Yeah.
And then Jared Goff has now played in 3 of the 20 highest scoring games in NFL history. Jared Goff.
Sure.
Johan Noja says the most efficient way to put Lions in your fantasy lineup is by adding their defense. No, don't add their defense. Offensive Lions.
Yeah, I don't know if Johan's actually played fantasy football before, but it doesn't work that way.
I think he may be kidding.
Yeah, Jared Goff, it's funny. People kind of wrote him off last year, but he's the guy who he elevates, what's the word I used? He amplifies the state of the offense around him. If he's getting good blocking, his first read is open. He's the human jugs machine who will make any throw on the field and put it right where it needs to be. If things go wrong, I think if there's pressure over the first read is not open, then all bets are off. But when things are going well, he plays well. And this stat here with all the high scoring games he's got and how well Detroit's offense is playing, that's not surprising considering the kind of quarterback he is. Now, I was the guy in the third quarter of last week talking about how the Lions were going to make the playoffs this year, and they proceeded to blow that lead against Minnesota, and then came out and did this. And we've been talking for a year and a quarter now about how the Lions keep losing in impressive fashion. At some point, you have to start winning, even if it's an ugly win. But you need to start turning these impressive losses into ugly wins just to make some kind of progress. And there's definitely progress in the Dan Campbell era, but it seems to me to have plateaued a little bit. We'd like to see more out of them going forward because they're kind of just spinning their wheels.
But they're spinning the wheels really fast, and that's great as a neutral fan.
Yeah, I think at a certain point they've got to be better than this. And I don't know whether, I mean, you can't say, given how they've played this year, that it's that Goff is holding them back.
No,
because that offense is scoring a zillion points.
Yeah.
But the defense is not coming together, even though there's good players on it. And they made a good pick with this kid Rodriguez, the linebacker, and Jeff Okudah is suddenly playing really well. And it's still, they're giving up tons of points.
So we go their upcoming schedule here at New England this week, as you noted, against Bailey, Zappe, and the Pats. Then they have the bye week. Then they're at Dallas, where maybe Cooper Rush will be still a quarterback. We'll see. Miami and Green Bay at home with tough games. And then this could be a fun one. Week 10, the Detroit Lions and that defense at the Chicago Bears and that offense.
Oh, wow. That really is the resistible force versus the movable object. Wow.
The Bears might have 50 completions by that point in time, so look out.
Oh, the Bears are going to run all over the Lions.
The Lions' run defense, I believe, is actually worse than the pass defense. So, yeah, Justin Fields may not throw in that game. Yeah, for the good of the land, they may have to just take the game off television, play it in an empty arena in the dark. Just report back a winner and loser, and we'll just move on with our lives and pretend it never happened. Moving on, another team that has lost some big leads of late is the Baltimore Ravens. The Buffalo Bills had lost 39 straight games in which they had been losing by 17 or more points. It goes all the way back to when Ryan Fitzpatrick was their starter in 2011, the well-traveled journeyman Ryan Fitzpatrick. Josh Allen, of course, led them back to this comeback win over Baltimore on Sunday. Now, he's part of the reason, I should point this out as the Quick Reads author, he is part of the reason Buffalo needed to come back in the first place because he was actually the worst quarterback in the league in the first quarter of week 4. So he helped dig them into that hole, but then, of course, he played a large part in digging them out of it. So, Brian, I'm looking at your notes here. The Ravens have already blown 2 leads of 17 points or more this season. The last team to do that in the first 4 games was the 2011 Vikings, which we have, I think, collectively no memory of except Adrian Peterson was probably there.
Yep.
The only 2 teams in NFL history to have more blown leads of 17 points or more in the season, the 2003 Falcons and the 2020 Chargers. And if there's 2 franchises you want to avoid being compared to in the curse loss department, it's the Falcons and Chargers.
Yeah, this is the Ravens have a chance to join like the Mount Rushmore of cursed teams here if they keep blowing these huge leads. I mean, you had the Vikings that list too, of a long history of coming short in the clutch. This is a horrible list to be on.
That 2003 Falcons team, that was the year Michael Vick broke his leg and missed most of the year. So they got through for 12 games with starts by Doug Johnson and Kurt Kittner. That's the thing that happened. Yeah. Probably, I'm guessing if we went through the play-by-play, we might find some crucial interceptions and sacks in there leading to those comebacks and those blown leads for the Falcons.
Yeah, you wouldn't expect the same kind of thing with Lamar Jackson at quarterback.
No, you would not. But it's not gone well. As you note here, the Ravens are in the top 5 in offensive DOA in the first, second, and third quarters, but 20th in the fourth quarter. And so we have to ask, is this kind of fall off late in the game, is this a real thing or a fluke through the first month of the year?
I think it's a fluke. Historically, these sort of quarter-by-quarter splits do not tend to hold for the whole year.
Yeah, and I think especially because, 4 games of 4 quarters, that's essentially one game, and you would write off one game as a bad game.
I mean, yeah. And I know as much as we want to believe that a certain team is just really good starters or a certain team is just really bad at finishing, it just tends to be pretty fluky.
Yeah. And assuming it is fluky, that bodes really well because the Ravens have been so good for 75% of their games. And, I hate to bring up the 4th down conversion because that's what all anyone is talking about now about the Ravens. But had they converted that, we'd be talking about an entirely different thing here. Like, oh yeah, sure, they the Bills are tough. They came back close, but the Ravens held on at the end.
Yeah.
We're talking 1 or 2 plays. And yes, the Ravens have had a couple of these calls in the last couple of years where they have done the analytically correct thing and failed and lost that game. But the coverage has just been crazy. It'd be like, you've called heads 3 times, but it's come up tails. Is it time to bring in a coin flipping expert to explain these things to me? Like, John Harbaugh after the game had a great explanation of, we went for the touchdown because a field goal makes the other team want to try more. They're going to march on the field anyway, et cetera, and so forth. And I just wish that everyone would just calm down and is that, yes, over time, the Ravens win more games with their strategy and what they're doing. They have gotten unlucky a couple times in a row. Things will be fine. Relax.
Remember, no one ever talks about this when it works.
Yes.
Right.
They only talk about it when it fails.
And even if it failed, I mean, if they had kicked the field goal, which many people wish they had kicked, all that means that they would have gone to overtime and they may have lost there. It's not like they would have won this game.
No, because the Bills got down to the 3-yard line with 1.5 minutes left.
That's right. They were kneeling. Yeah.
Imagine that the Bills run the same drive, right? Which we don't know for sure. But imagine the Bills run the same drive on their next drive. The Bills are at the 3 with 1.5 minutes left. The odds of them scoring a touchdown and beating Baltimore anyway are very high.
Yeah. And as far as small sample size and that kind of thing goes, if that 4th down pass is a touchdown instead of an interception, this 20th ranking in 4th quarter DVOA looks a lot different.
Yeah.
I would guess probably somewhere near 10th instead of 20th. So basically the other end of the scale as far as where they would fall. So again, yes, fluky things happen when you're looking at individual quarters in a handful of games. This will probably balance out, and as ugly and the losses count. You can't go back and change that, but they're probably going to win a lot more games going forward. And I'm certainly not panicking about the Ravens yet. Maybe panicking about their defense. The defense has had a lot of issues.
Their defense is still 16th in DVOA. That's not panic.
That's not panic.
That's it's not as good as we want it to be, but it's not panic.
No. Oh, another quarterback having a big game, or at least a big moment on Sunday was Aaron Rodgers of the Green Bay Packers. He is now the 5th quarterback in NFL history to throw 500 touchdowns in regular season and playoffs combined, joining Tom Brady, Drew Brees, Peyton Manning, and Brett Favre, also with the Green Bay Packers. He's now 455 in the regular season, so he can get 45 more and just get 500 in the regular season alone. Probably if he sticks around, maybe by the end of 2023, he can get that done. And very notable here, pick sixes aren't something you would think would be very predictable. But when you look at who has thrown a lot of them, you find it's the guys who, they're really bad. Aaron Rodgers is not really bad.
Throw lots of interceptions, right? Pick sixes are not predictable, but interceptions are a little bit predictable. And guys who throw lots of picks throw lots of pick sixes. And guys who avoid throwing picks, like Aaron Rodgers, do not throw pick sixes. So that was very rare.
Yeah, it was on Sunday. Rodgers threw just the 4th pick 6 of his career, which is astonishing. I mean, we were talking about Geno Smith earlier. Geno Smith already has 8 on just over 1,100 pass attempts, while Rodgers is at near 8,000 pass attempts. Justin Herbert and Kyler Murray also have 4 career pick 6 here. And Aaron Rodgers has been playing, they were in 2nd grade when Aaron Rodgers entered the NFL. Rodgers' ability to avoid interceptions has been his greatest strength in his career.
Yes.
And that impresses me more than the 500 touchdowns, quite honest. I mean, because if you are a great player and you play forever, you're going to throw a bunch of touchdowns. But the fact that Rodgers just never throws pick 6, that's why it was shocking that he threw 1 against the Patriots and nearly blew that game, because it just doesn't happen.
Yeah, and I will point out that the Packers are still 8th in offensive DVOA, despite the struggles their offense had against the Patriots this week. So, this is still one of the better offensive teams in the league, even though it feels like they really missed Davante Adams. The running game has been really good. They have a weird split for the passing game, and you can get these splits on FO Plus with an FO Plus subscription, of course. And their passing game is 21st in the league on first down and 24th on third down. but second on second down. That's one of those weird splits that, tends to be kind of fluky, but you like to point it out because it's just weird.
Yeah. And they had another weird split on Sunday where Brett Favre had the worst passing DER in the first half of this week, but the best passing DER in the second half this week.
Aaron Rodgers, I think you mean.
Yes. What did I say?
You said Brett Favre.
Brett Favre had 0 DER. That I can confirm. He's too busy with his other nefarious activities that we won't get into today. Aaron Rodgers was the worst passer of the week in the first half and the best passer in the second half.
I think it was a weird
game for a lot of reasons. But I think that gets into
the Packers couldn't throw deep in the first half. Like they didn't try, and a couple times they tried, it was way off. Rodgers is the quarterback who really relies on these relationships with receivers, there's a lot of chemistry going on there, and that hasn't really clicked here through the first month. It's slowly getting better, but this is something that, I think he's hurt more from losing Devontae Adams than, for example, the Chiefs are from losing Tyreek Holmes, just because Rodgers is so much, okay, plays breaking down, I know exactly where my guy is, I trust he's going to be there, and I'm going to throw him the ball. And he doesn't quite have that same level of chemistry yet with the young receivers that are in the lineup. He's going to Randall Cobb in the key situations at the end against the Patriots because he knows Cobb, he knows where he's going to be.
I feel like, we're talking about Green Bay ranking 8th. I feel like we were talking about how teams are congested in the middle of the DVOA rankings. We're 4 weeks in here. There's only 3 offenses with a DVOA above 20%, and there's only 2 offenses with a DVOA below and minus 20%. So everyone else is kind of in that range, which would be typical over a full year, but only 4 weeks in, you would expect to find more outliers. And there's just not that many teams that look extremely great or extremely awful this year.
That's what we said going into the season. So that's what happens when half the league is 2-2. It's just there's a lot of parity this year.
And these top 3 offenses, by the way, that are above 20%. You have Baltimore, which will probably stay close to that level all year. Miami, which is a huge question mark right now, and Seattle, which we've already all said we think will not be able to keep this up. So it's a very, very muddled season. There's going to be 9, 10 wins, maybe an 8-win. Well, maybe an 8-win team in the playoffs come January. It's going to be some strange results, but it'll be exciting to follow because your team will be alive.
Jacksonville. There'll be an 8-win team in the playoffs. Jacksonville.
Yes. They have the best shot of that. Okay, moving on. Where have I done with our notes here? There they are. More Green Bay stuff. The Green Bay Packers now have 785 wins as a franchise. That is a new NFL record.
It ties the Chicago Bears for the most wins in NFL history. It is the first time the Bears franchise has not been number 1 at all overall since Week 11 of 1921.
I remember that was good. That was back in the early days of Football Outsiders.
It was Football Abacus.
Yes, it actually believe it or not, I do actually know about the Week 11 1921 game because it's a very significant game. It is known as the Staley Swindle because it was the Chicago Staleys, at that time against the Buffalo All-Americans. The Buffalo All-Americans were one of the best teams in the early 1920s. That year they were 8-0-2, and at that time ties didn't count, so they were essentially undefeated. And they were 8-0-2. They were the champions. They made up little pins and everything. They celebrated their championship. This is at the end of November. They're 8-0-2. The Bears, the Staleys, were 7-1. They had played 7 games in Chicago, had won all of them, and had played 1 road game in Buffalo and had lost to the All-Americans. So it's very clear. Your All-Americans are your champions. Your Staleys are your runners-up. Everything's good. George Halas didn't like that. George Halas wanted another crack at Buffalo, and so he said, "Why don't you come down to Chicago and we'll play another game?" Because this time you made your own schedule. You played whoever you wanted to at any point in time. And the All-Americans were champions, and they liked that, but they also liked money. And one of the best things you could do as a football team in the early 1920s was play a game in Chicago because the Staleys always sold out wherever they went. So he agreed to the owner of the All-Americans, agreed to a game under the condition that this is a postseason exhibition game. This game doesn't count. We're just going down there for the money, and that'll be good. And George Halas smiled and nodded and said, yes, this sounds good. So half the All-Americans got on a train and went over to play a game in Akron on December 3rd. They played the Akron Pros, and they won that game to get to 9-0. And half the team went home because the season was over. They didn't want to play anymore. The half that played the Akron Pros. They celebrated that night very heavily. They got on an all-night train and went to Chicago to play the Staleys the very next day. And they got beaten pretty badly by the Staleys. At which point, George Halas turned around and said, hey, this game totally counts. You can't have an exhibition game if there's no set end to the season. And he quickly scheduled 2 more games, and he won another one of them to get the Staleys to 9-1 as well. So now you have the Staleys claiming we're our co-champions at 9-1, while the All-Americans going, no, this was an exhibition game. This doesn't count. We told the media it's an exhibition game. All the posters say it's an exhibition game. And Halas said, yeah, I agreed to that. But in retrospect, no, this game counts. We're the champions. And he went to the league office and said, we're tied at 1-1. That should be the first tiebreaker because we're both 9-1. They won the game in Buffalo. We won the game in Chicago. So we need to go to the second tiebreaker. And we don't have a second tiebreaker. But what I think it should be is the team that won the second game should be the champion. Because that's the one that happened more recently and therefore is more relevant. And the rest of the league agreed with him. And that's why the Chicago Staleys are the 1921 champions. They won their 19th game in very suspicious circumstances and have been the team with the most wins in league history ever since. Which just goes to show you, if you lie and cheat and steal, it will come back to haunt you 101 years later. 1920s football. Crazy.
I have nothing to add. I mean, the early NFL was the Wild West, man.
That is a story. I had no idea the Chicago Bears were run by Bobby the Brain Heenan. That is a story straight out of a Pro Wrestling Heel Manager playbook. That is fantastic. I don't think I knew that.
They tried it again a few years later, but people had caught on by then.
I don't think that trick would work twice. Now talking about the future, the very immediate future of the Green Bay Packers, they will travel to London this weekend to play another longtime NFL franchise, the New York Giants, which is notable because I'm not sure how long they've been playing these games in London, but this is the first game in London where both teams will have winning records at the time of kickoff. The NFL does not send its primary games to London. This did not look like a primary game a month ago, but these Giants, I like to tell you when I am right, but I will also tell you when I have been wrong. I thought they were going to get the first draft pick, and
me too.
They're not.
Too. They've escaped with some very close wins. They are not playing well.
No.
They are not playing well.
That being said, it looks like the Giants will be starting either Davis Webb or Jake Fromm in the London game. So this continues our tendency of exporting only the best games to London.
Oh, Packers defense and special teams, baby.
Jake Fromm, State Farm is still in the league. I don't think I.
Yeah, I didn't know Jake Fromm was still on their roster. I guess they're bringing him in special because Tyrod Taylor got injured.
Exactly. They're trying him out today, and there's actually some talk that he might just jump right into the starting role because he knows the offense.
Packers.
Maybe we are still in the 1920s.
All right, Packers defense and special teams. Let's talk about some odds and ends, man. We've got some more. We've got so many stats for people. That's why this is the stat show, kids.
It is the stat show. Yeah, we are kind of dragging here. Fourth down odds and ends that Brian's put together. Chiefs and Bucks from this past Sunday night. I love this one. The Tampa Bay Bucks in their first 3 games allowed 27 points. Patrick Mahomes scored 28 of them in the first half.
Yes.
Turns out Patrick Mahomes is still good. Patrick Mahomes, the most fun play of the night, and honestly, one of the most fun plays Patrick Mahomes has ever had. The scramble to the right sideline, the tease the run, the ballet pirouette to escape a defender, the tease a run a second time, the little almost a handoff, almost an overhand, like a shot put for about 2 yards to Clyde Edwards-Helaire for the 2-yard touchdown. He scrambled 39.4 yards on that play before throwing the pass. That is 4 touchdown passes in his career with over 30-plus yards scrambling first. No other quarterback has more than 1 in the past 5 seasons.
Mahomes is just made of magic. He does things which should not work. Yeah. That's why I was so down the Chiefs drafting him, because all that stuff he did in college, that's not going to work in the pros, and it just keeps working. It's amazing.
my Sunday setup, I've got one TV that's got the local game, which is usually the Seahawks, and I got my the big screen gets the 4-way split on Sunday Ticket. And whenever I am choosing games, first thing I look at honestly is the Cardinals and 49ers, since I am writing their chapters next year. But the next thing I look at is where is Patrick Mahomes, and how can I put him on TV and watch him play football, because that is more fun than anything else in the NFL right now. Patrick Mahomes has now hit 20,000 yards in only 67 games played. That is a new record, breaking the record set by Matthew Stafford of 71 games. Not the first record Patrick Mahomes has broken, won't be the last. And Tampa Bay, they fell behind early, so there wasn't that much critique of them or blowback on them. But they only had 6 rushes the entire game, and that is 6 handoffs. There's no kneels or anything like that in there. And that is the second fewest in NFL history. And no quarterback likes to abandon the run like Tom Brady.
He's been the quarterback 3 of the 5 times that a team has had 6 or fewer runs in NFL history. And by the way, this is one of the reasons why we ended up with the very strange DVOA result, where Tampa Bay had a higher DVOA for this game than Kansas City did. Because Tampa Bay never ran the ball, and passing is more efficient than rushing. So even though they were doing it from behind, they were passing. Their offense was more efficient. Tampa Bay actually averaged a yard per play more than Kansas City in this game. That's sort of stunning.
And I believe had the only turnover.
Kansas City had the only turnover, right? They threw a pick.
Yes, because of the opening kickoff. Like Kansas City.
Oh, right. Yeah, Tampa Bay put the opening kickoff on the ground.
Tampa Bay's offense did not have a turnover. But with that, the big early lead was Tampa Bay never had the ball and a chance to tie or take the lead. They were always down by multiple scores. So Kansas City could afford to play more conservatively by their standards, which is still more aggressive than 80% of teams probably. Moving on to other notes around the league, Zach Wilson catches a touchdown pass against the Pittsburgh Steelers, the first quarterback in Jets history to catch a touchdown pass, which leads to a fun discussion of which franchise that has never had a quarterback catch a touchdown pass will be the next to do it. And
there
we
are
have a list.
8 teams left which have never had a quarterback catch a touchdown pass. They are the Carolina Panthers, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the Washington Commanders, the New York Giants, the San Francisco 49ers, the Arizona Cardinals, the Baltimore Ravens, and the Las Vegas Raiders. I just want to see the play which involves the 49ers catching a touchdown pass. I want to see the plan that has Jimmy Garoppolo running a pass pattern.
It's one of these Philly specials. I would think it would be the Giants. Daniel Jones is surprisingly nimble.
60 rushing yards this week, 60 yards and a couple of touchdowns. Tops in rushing DYAR, even though he left in, I think, the third quarter.
Yeah.
And Brian Dable's the guy who unleashed Josh Allen as a no one going in the draft thought Allen was going to be a rushing threat. Dable set him free.
No, everybody thought Allen was going to be a rushing threat. Everybody knew that was the one part of his game that everyone thought was actually good.
I stand corrected.
And Josh Allen does have a touchdown reception in the playoffs with Dable calling plays. So
yes. And I would
pick the Arizona Cardinals because you have a combination of the very athletic quarterback and an offense that doesn't always quite seem to know what it's doing, so might need to draw something up to generate more offense. I think Murray might be a prime candidate for a touchdown reception.
Cliff Kingsbury's main offense is very vanilla, but he will break out the funky stuff. And I can imagine James Conner going back to throw to Kyler Murray. That's a thing you can see. I'm thinking more of fun stuff. Like, what if the Ravens come out with Lamar Jackson and Tyler Huntley on the field at the same time? That's 2 athletic quarterbacks who could be theoretically eligible to catch a pass there. And my initial thought looking at this list was that there's no way Tom Brady's going to do it at this point in his career. And then I remembered it wasn't that long ago the Patriots threw him a pass in the Super Bowl.
Yep.
So you can't write anything off there.
Johan Noha says the Panthers are his vote, but it would require them to approach the end zone. Whose quarterback do you want to have the ball the least? I think Tom Brady. You don't want Tom Brady running pass patterns.
No, you can avoid it. No, I'm envisioning a Baker Mayfield to Sam Darnold touchdown route or something like that, and I don't think it would go very well.
Plus, that requires a small bit of creativity, and that's not what you're getting from the Panthers this season. The Panthers who have made Christian McCaffrey a between the tackles runner.
Yes. Now, talking about quarterback touchdown catches, the record for a franchise is debatable because positions weren't always as solidified as they are now. And Brian, this is anything like pre-AFL. I'm going to defer to you. I think this is your area of expertise.
Yeah, when you're talking about quarterbacks catching touchdowns, you have to define what a quarterback is. It does take some hill count. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. The Lions have had 6 players labeled as quarterbacks catch touchdown passes, but 4 of them were pre-1960, and Clyde LaForce and both Jerry Reichow, they were secondary passers / ends and halfbacks, and they don't, whether you count them or not is really questionable. So yeah. I would give the award to the Dallas Cowboys, who because Dak Prescott has caught 1, and Danny White caught 2 when he was the starting quarterback. He wasn't a puncher. He wasn't rotating with Staubach. He was the starting quarterback, and he caught a couple touchdown passes. So the Dallas Cowboys, I would say, have the most quarterback reception touchdowns in NFL history.
Elsewhere in the league, Trevor Lawrence, the first player since at least 1991 to lose 4 fumbles in a game. That's kind of a bad luck stat. There's been lots of players who have had 4 fumbles in a game, but they or their teammates recover at least one of those balls. So this losing 4 fumbles is more bad luck on a bad day than necessarily a historically bad day.
Yeah, there's some question about whether 4 fumbles lost is the record or not. And the fact of the matter is the NFL has never really kept track of these kind of things because, yeah, it is just bad luck that you have to drop that many things. It's the most since at least 1991, but there's just no record before that. Try not fumbling 4 times. Try not playing in a rainstorm. I think that'd be my advice to Lawrence going forward.
It was also a rainstorm, not quite as bad as the Chicago storm in Week 1, but definitely a soggy day. Kenny Pickett did not throw a single incomplete pass in his debut. Every pass he threw was caught. 10 by his teammates, 3 by defenders. But that is the record for most pass attempts in a game where every pass was caught by somebody. Earl Morrall and Heath Schuler, speaking of great backup quarterbacks of days gone by, they each had 12 passes in a game without a single incomplete pass.
Yeah, Pickett's also the first quarterback to have multiple rushing touchdowns in his first career game. Very strange stat line for Pickett. He's going to be in trivia questions for years and years to come, whether or not he had to being a good passer or not.
Gets to play 3 of the hardest defenses in the league over the next 4 weeks. So good luck,
boy.
Why wouldn't you give him the 10 days of practice to get to play this week? And instead, you're going to put him in halftime, and now you're going to throw him to the Wolves. I have no idea what the Steelers are doing.
I would imagine the list of quarterbacks with multiple rushing touchdowns and multiple interceptions who didn't start in the game is very short.
Yes. Buffalo, Tampa Bay, and Philly.
Ooh.
Plus Miami. That's Pittsburgh's next 4 games. Buffalo, Tampa Bay, Miami, and Philly.
Welcome to the NFL, kid.
0-4.
Well, it is. It's another rookie quarterback, Bailey Zappe. Every time I read this, I want to say Bailey Zapp, but it's Bailey Zappe. The first touchdown pass from a rookie quarterback this season in Week 4. It took 4 weeks for a rookie to throw a touchdown pass. The first time it's taken that long since 2007. Trivia question: who was the first rookie quarterback to throw a touchdown pass 15 years ago? Anyone who guesses this answer right, I will mail a shiny quarter.
There are some years where just no one takes over right at the beginning. And 2007 was the last time we just said, like, this quarterback class is just garbage, and no one's even going to pretend we have a thing going on here.
We've got some other fun stats here while people are trying to guess who was the first rookie quarterback to throw a touchdown pass in 2007. Cooper Kupp, with 42 receptions, currently beats the entire Chicago Bears offense by 8. That's good.
Eminently believable if you watched either of them play.
We were rooting for that in the Discord server all through Monday night with because Kupp kept getting those like 2 or 3 yard catches at the end of the game and everything was blown out. Keep going to the Kupp. I want the stat to last as long as physically possible because there's no way one receiver is going to beat that whole team for a full season, right? I mean,
right?
We're fairly sure about that. Just keep padding those. The Rams have no other receivers. The Bears have no quarterback. Keep going.
That's true.
Here's another shocking stat. the Colts with Jonathan Taylor are last in run offense DVOA so far. They were second last year. They are last so far. And I love our preseason Kubiak fantasy projections, but I feel terrible about the fact that we had Jonathan Taylor and Christian McCaffrey as the top two running backs because they have not been the top two running backs this year at all.
McCaffrey, at least we can give a little bit of, the Panthers have no idea what they were doing. We can put that stamp on that
and
one.
He's still getting PPR points because he's still catching lots of passes. But Jonathan Taylor has been bad, and their offensive line has been really bad.
That is one of the strangest things of the year for me. The fact that like Quentin Nelson is no longer like just destroying people is very strange.
Right, and given the weaknesses that they have other places, if Quentin Nelson is not destroying people, then
yeah, and Matt Ryan has looked very, very washed up. Teams aren't afraid of the pass; they're sacking the box. It's I don't think it's going to turn around in Indianapolis anytime soon.
I don't think anybody has a winner on our 2007 first rookie touchdown passer.
I think we'll go ahead and call that contest. The answer is Trent Edwards, the Buffalo Bills.
Stanford's own.
That's right. On the long list of great Stanford quarterbacks, the John Elway and Andrew Luck. Who can forget Trent Edwards? We got a few minutes left. We want to go through some of these miscellaneous things at the end here.
I'll hit at least one more here. Right. That the Panthers are now 1-26 under Matt Rhule when their opponent scores 17 or more points. That's bad. Over the past 5 years, teams have won about 35% of the time when allowing 17 or more points. So if the Panthers were just average, you'd expect them to have won 9 or 10 games in 27 tries. The odds that a team would win one or fewer games, I had to get out Wolfram Alpha to calculate this, is 0.008%, assuming they were league average. Matt Rhule, and I don't want to jump out to conclusions too early on here. Matt Rhule may not be a very good head coach.
Fired. Gonna get fired.
Do you think he makes it to Halloween? That was the question I was going to ask.
Well, now he has to go up against the 49ers defense this week. This could be an embarrassment that might actually end up getting him kicked out right away.
The thing is, if they fire him, they make Ben McAdoo the interim coach. He's the offensive coordinator. So if you fire him because the offense isn't working, and then you put the team in the hands of the guy who runs the offense, it doesn't make any sense.
Well, you don't fire him because of these 4 games. You fire him because of the past 3 years.
Yeah.
And if I'm Ben McAdoo, I'm highly compensated to do this job for the next 3 months, but I do not expect to be having it the same job in 2023. So it's the start of a house cleaning. But that 49ers defense against this Carolina offense,
that could get ugly.
You won't be shocked that the over/under formula predicts the Panthers with the lowest total of any team this week.
I am not shocked by it. Can you score negative points? Is that possible?
Yes, if you're on Fox and the little football that shows you how to ball.
I hadn't thought of that.
And it looks like you've scored negative points.
Yeah.
They'll get 2 points when Garoppolo one's out of the back of the end zone, and then that'll be it. They'll lose like 24-2 or something.
And one more thing, this is, I guess it's not surprising, but to actually process it is kind of mind-blowing. It's week 4. This is the first time the New England Patriots are alone in last place in their division in week 4 or later since 2000.
Since before Football Outsiders, yes.
Since before the AFC East was 14.
Years.
Yes.
Before the Texans existed.
Yes.
It's been a long, long time. And it's not like they're a historically inept team or anything. They just have this splits have gone this way in the first 4 weeks, but that's insane. That is your favorite franchise's favorite era came and went in the span in between the Patriots being alone in last place this late into the year.
First time in the 21st century.
Yes.
Some would argue that the year 2000 does count as the 20th century.
Those people are wrong.
I agree with you there. But I think that's going to do it today. Anyone else got anything they want to shoehorn in here?
let's wrap it on up, baby.
I think we can wrap it on up for the day. Thank you for joining us, listeners. Thank you, Aaron, for being part of the show. Thank you, Brian, for being part of the show. That was a fun time, everyone. Let's do it again next week. Bye-bye.
Yes.